But it all starts, Dominic, with that main event of the evening. Alexa Grasso, now your champion at women's
Champ.
flyweight. She will have to defeat once again the woman she took the belt from, the one who stood atop the women's flyweight mountain for
Hmm.
years, Valentina Shevchenko. And she is coming back with a vengeance, Dominic. Some of the talk of Fight Week has been Valentina all business. She
Yeah.
said, I'm not making plans Saturday. There is no Saturday night as far as I'm concerned.
Hmm.
All it is my performance. That's
Yeah.
that's all that matters. There's no after party plans, none of that. The performance will speak for itself. And Dominic, she comes in still the favorite despite
Hmm.
losing the first fight, despite being finished in the first fight, minus 170 as it stands. That is a significant less favorite than she was the first time out. I think
Yes.
she was around a minus like 600.
I think because what did you hit Alexa at, like plus
Well,
625?
plus
So
600, but that was a
yeah,
live bet, and that
yeah,
happened after like the second round or after the first round, so it might have
yeah,
lowered a little bit. But I think she went into that fight minus 600 around
yeah.
that. Now minus 170, Grasso, your champion, plus 142. Dominic, there's been a lot of takes made about that first fight, especially as the second one draws closer. And and some vary depending on the person you're talking to. You talk to one person, you go, Alexa finished a champion who was dominant for a long time, but she had shown some signs of slipping backwards. She was the right person at the right time to
Hmm.
kind of show that the next era is here at flyweight and win, in decisive fashion, considering she choked her out, finished her.
Hmm.
But then you'll see another person who talks about that first fight talk about how they believe Valentina was in full control, and then she slipped up, gave her back up, and Grasso was able to capitalize. One mistake cost her that title. So you're seeing a lot of varying takes out there. I want to know what kind of your take on that first fight is, and ultimately, what can we expect from fight number dos?
Numero dos. I did go back and watch it today. It felt good to rewatch a rematch that we're getting so close to the first one because I feel like there's not a lot that can change, and I think it's beneficial. And so I was watching it. It went 1-0 Alexa, round two Valentina, round three Valentina. I thought Alexa was actually winning the fourth round because it stayed on the feet. Valentina wasn't able to get Alexa down in that round, and then obviously the finish came at the tail end, 4:34 into round four. So had she not got that submission or it lasted the 26 more seconds, I had it 2-2 going into round number five, which should say all it needs to be said about how really closely contested the fight was. I thought Alexa really, I knew she was a great boxer, and that was her biggest skill set going in. But to be able to outperform and stick with Valentina, who's such an electric striker in her own right on the feet, was very impressive for Alexa. And as that fight went on, she got better at stuffing the takedowns and sprawling. But I still feel like that is the weakness she's going to have to really, or at least through this camp to prepare for this second fight. That's where she had to drill hard because Valentina does have phenomenal grappling and wrestling that we've seen her use. And I think she went back and watched that first fight and saw that's where she had the most success. On the feet, Valentina was not winning that fight like she is used to doing. I look for an aggressive Valentina to look and get Alexa down much earlier than the first fight, more often than the first fight. If Alexa has fixed that little weakness in her game, very, very interesting rematch we have on our hands.
Sure, and I think you make a point though before I even set it up about, or maybe I forget when you just I forget when you just said it, but the good point was that not a ton can change because they just fought for the first time back in March. So how much can one really improve on whatever perceived weaknesses there are in the game? And you got to think the idea of improving on something that was a perceived flaw in fight number one is going to favor your champion Alexa Grasso here, and the big reason for that is the trajectory in their careers right now.
Yeah.
Alexa Grasso, in her prime,
Yes.
she has all the confidence in the world taking that title. She goes in the first one a big underdog, finds a way to not just win the fight but finish Valentina the first to do so in the UFC. Meanwhile, Valentina's 35 years old. You know, she still looked great even in that fight at times, and you've seen her look great in really I mean, there was a time where we Dominic, we were given so much credit to previous challengers for so much as taking a round from Valentina. Remember Jennifer Maya?
Yep.
She won 1 round, and that was the talking point for that fight.
Mm-hmm.
But you did start to see with the Taylor Santos fight, and give credit where it's due to the challengers that maybe they've just gotten better. The division's gotten better. I think that
Sure.
since we've had this division a little longer, it's given more time for some of these younger ladies to kind of improve and age a little bit, get
Mm-hmm.
better, and be true challengers. So like Taylor Santos, a great challenge. I thought she won that fight. But going into the Grasso fight, I still favored Valentina pretty highly, and to see Valentina, who was such a big favorite going in my perception, have a very competitive fight with Alexa Grasso, definitely spoke to how much Grasso had improved. But the
Yeah.
question mark still remains: that is it really possible for Valentina to get better at 35 years old
Yeah.
when some of her athletics, skill set, some of those more athletic gifts that she has, maybe are starting to age out. I don't think it's like a rapid decline. I don't think that she's like a severely compromised version of who she was at her best, but it might just be enough to where she is no longer not only the most dominant fighter in her weight class, but she might not even be the best
Mm-hmm.
anymore. So for you, do you kind of see it the same way that it's going to be kind of tough for someone like Valentina at her age, considering the more closer fights she's had as of late to really make those changes, especially compared to Grasso, to make those kind of adjustments going into fight two?
I think it could be difficult for sure. And I guess even to counteract what I said in my first kind of statement was that, you made a good point. Alexa showed weaknesses. Can she really improve that takedown defense a lot in 5.5 months? We're going to get to see if she can do that as well. But I do lean the younger fighter, the fighter with the momentum, the person that is undefeated now at 125 pounds is in her weight class in Alexa Grasso. Valentina is, you're right, hasn't had this big fall from grace or this big moment like a lot of people before her that have been great have had. But it kind of leaves you thinking, well, she could. She could have that moment, and it could be in this fight here. It's hard though because of the championship pedigree and the competition that Valentina's fought. I'd like to think that maybe it's not so much her making the physical kind of tweaks between these two fights, but the game plan style. I want to see if
Mm.
her game plan for this will be different than what it was in that first fight based upon where she had success and where Alexa showed weaknesses. And being the great fight IQ that she has, great team and coaches that she has, I think it's definitely possible. But the same can even be said for Alexa. That's why it's like such a just fantastic,
Mm.
exciting type rematch. It's more closely contested, it feels, for this rematch than some of the others that we've seen. Like, I still pretty much favored Kamaru relatively heavy in their rematch. Izzy got knocked out, but I felt like he would probably beat Alex. But like this one, I can see Valentina regaining the championship. I can see Alexa cementing she did not have a fluke victory for those that think it was a fluke. This is good stuff, man.
Yeah, I know we just saw it with Izzy when he got that win over Pereira, but in terms of these situations where a champion loses the belt and then they get the immediate rematch, does not favor them
Yeah,
in historically.
historically.
The
Hmm.
That's why it's one of the big reasons why I'm kind of against the concept. It's not about, like, everybody wants to talk about what the champion deserves and the respect they deserve for being such a long-standing champion. And like, I get at face value that seems to be the case, but I honestly think it almost favors them
Hmm.
to, if you're really talking about what's best for them or what's going to be the best route to potentially get that title back, it's probably to go take on a different challenge, give yourself more time, get a win, get the confidence back, maybe improve on some things, gives you longer amount of time to improve on some things.
Hmm.
And then, like, if Alexa went and beat whoever, Aaron Blanchfield, Manon Fior, whoever, and then Valentina beats whoever in that time, they come back and the rematch is bigger. And I think you have an even more closely contested fight. Obviously, This fight's very close on paper. The challenger, the former champion, is favored, but from a betting perspective, it's kind of Alexa or nothing here as far as I'm concerned, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking Alexa Grasso money line at plus 142. I could totally see Valentina coming in here and silencing a lot of doubters, silencing me, who's kind of speaking about her age and, has she lost a step? I could totally see her coming in here and reminding everybody, like, no, this is why I was a big favorite in that first fight. Had an
Yeah.
off night, get right back on that horse and dominate her way to a victory. That's not how I think it's going to go. The more likely route is, I think you're going to get a very strategic fight here from both women,
Mm-hmm.
both kind of recognizing the massive moment that they're involved in. Alexa Grasso really being a representative of her people, of her country here. Um, Not the lone representative. I mean, there's a lot of Mexican fighters on this
Mm-hmm.
card, but she's the last champion standing. Brandon Moreno lost
Yep.
his title. Irene Aldana wasn't able to win hers. Jair Rodriguez wasn't able to become the undisputed champion. So she's the last, like the last of the Mohicans. She's like the last
Mm-hmm.
of the Mexican champions here.
Yep.
So there's a lot on her shoulders to show why she was able to get that win in the first place and leave no doubt. Meanwhile, Valentina, this has got to feel like a big pressure for her because she's reigned for so long. She doesn't really know at this point. It feels so foreign to her to not be in the title picture. So with the loss, who says she ever gets back here? If Alexa goes on a long run and you have two losses to Alexa Grasso, it's going to be hard to get that third fight. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
pressure for both. Who is going to make those diamonds from that pressure? That's definitely what's at stake here.
And I wanted to point out one more thing because you've hit this home before. You mentioned the lack of success for immediate rematches for former champions trying to get their belt back, Izzy being an outlier from what we saw this year. But there's another thing weighing on Valentina as well, no, and it is that 35-year and older statistic that you throw around between 125 and 170 pounds. I believe the last time we checked, it was 2 and 29 or something like
Mhm.
that. So not only is Valentina the former champion in an immediate rematch, but she's now the 35-year-old in the lower weight classes. Will both of those weighing on her? Can she overcome it all, Noah? Can she overcome it all?
I hope that is possibly great to throw in there. I didn't mention that stat because I thought it was just men's weight classes.
Okay.
I don't know if that applies to the women. That might be something for us to do a little digging on. But
Mm-hmm.
regardless, I think the odds do not favor her in terms of a lot of those external factors. But yet she's still the favorite going in. So
Yeah.
the market is saying otherwise. They're
Mm-hmm.
saying that the first fight, they're kind of saying in this way, like, okay, it's a closer fight on paper, but the finish, a competitive fight, but one that they seem to favor, at not quite a 2-1, but definitely to the point where not necessarily, I don't know if you can quite say fluke, but the finish being kind of a fluke there. I don't really see a finish in this one. I think it kind of goes to the scorecards either
Uh-huh.
way. I think it will be very competitive, but it's Alexa or nothing on the betting side for me, anyways.
And we'll see how these lines will behave the next 2 days as we head into fight night as well. Something to
How
keep an
have
eye on.
they changed over the week? Have they
I
been
saw
changing a
something
lot?
today. Valentina in July, when the fight was booked, had opened around minus 230 or something like that,
Wow.
250 max, and it has gradually, week by week, gotten to where we are today.
Yeah, I could see it closing a little bit more by the time the fight gets
Mm-hmm.
started. So before we move on, we will talk about that co-main event, though, Dominic,
Have to.
because another great fight here. This one kind of thrown together. A lot of fights falling out on this card. Our original co-main was Kelvin Gastelum taking on Shavkat Rakhmonov. Now your co-main, Kevin Holland taking on Jack Della Maddalena. Plus
Mm-hmm.
124 is Trailblazer, while Jack Della comes at a minus 148. How much do you think it has affected the value on Jack here that he's coming off of a split decision against Basil Hafez, a debutant in the UFC who went to war At times, looked like he might even win the fight. Obviously, one judge gave it to him.
Yeah.
How much do you think that's affected the value on Jack here? Because he is still a favorite, but much closer to Kevin Holland, a guy who is electric and one of the a very fan friendly fighter.
Hmm.
But we have seen him take some losses in the UFC, and for Jack, he remains undefeated as a UFC fighter.
He does that. This line is heavily impacted by Jack's fight. That was literally less than 2 months ago. What will be just about 2 months on the dot by the time he steps in Saturday night with Kevin Holland. That's 100% why this line is close. But to be honest, and this is as a Jackie Moon fan, I probably would have expected him to still be a favorite, obviously, in a relatively big. I don't know how big if that fight would have just ended easier with Hafez. Maybe he would have been 2-1 at least, I would think. But even still, at that number, say that's what the line would have been. Kevin Holland at those odds against a guy that, in a way, is still unproven. He beat Randy Brown, right? He finished Randy Brown. Jack did.
Mhm.
That's a huge win. But other than that, this is still a pretty big step up to go to Kevin Holland, regardless of the losses that Kevin has. He's been in there with some of the top dogs for many, many years. He's the most active fighter on the entire UFC roster, maybe in all of MMA, to be quite honest. Kevin Holland at dog odds, I think is great value regardless of where it is. Noah, I think, is going to probably talk about it. He's going to bet Kevin. Wishes those odds would have been a little bit higher going into this one. But yes, that last fight heavily has impacted this line. And to be quite honest, I don't blame the line for being impacted by it. I know it was short notice for both guys, so it's not easy for Jack. But my goodness, man, like, not only was that such a close battle where he had to go through the ringer, you're turning around in just 2 months to be in a fight with Kevin Holland. That's just not a good recipe for Della Maddalena.
It might also be worth noting that that was the first time we saw Jack make some mental mistakes in there.
Yeah,
When it
yes, it
came to
was.
he just sort of got the way he was allowing himself to be taken down. You could sense the frustration
Hmm.
from his coaches in his corner, and it speaks to the fact this is a young guy. Like he's very
Yeah.
young, and we've seen him look so polished, especially when a fight in the right matchup, when it stays standing. The way he took out Randy Brown was very impressive. But at the end of the day, I mean, he's still got a lot of growing to do. Um, I am taking Kevin Holland money line here. I am very frustrated that the line is what it is because I still think there's value on Kevin Holland. But if Jack had, at least made it a pretty decisive win over Basil Hafez, I mean, Hafez looked really good there, so it's hard to
Yeah.
put that all on Jackie. Why am I saying Jackie now? See, look what
I
you have
just
me
like that I can
doing.
rub off on you sometimes.
Yeah, but Kevin Holland would have been a much bigger underdog if Jack had just done what he normally does and what you would
Yeah.
expect him to do against a debutant making the short notice step up. So I have loved the idea of this theoretical matchup for months and months and months. And the idea of it always in my head turned to I like Kevin Holland in that spot.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
love the idea of taking him at like a plus 180 or something because I feel like that's around where you would have been able to get him at.
Mhm.
Instead, plus 124. All right, let's do it because
Yeah.
this is the thing, man. I think a lot of people look at the ceiling of these two and they tend to think, okay, well, Jack, we still haven't quite seen him have that. I mean, the Basil fight was at worst like a slight step back, like
Mhm.
on a lot of people's maybe evaluation of him. But for the most part, he's yet to really slip up. Like he's yet to
Right.
take that loss. He's yet to show that there's a ceiling for him. Like for all we know, he could still be a champion, and that's just going to
Mhm.
be one of those weird fights where, look, maybe Basil Hafez is really that good too.
Yeah.
But Kevin, we've seen those kind of down moments. We've seen the tough decision losses with Derek Brunson and Marvin Vittori. He had that awesome fight with Wonderboy Thompson late
Mhm.
last year, but it was one that he sort of fought much against what you would, well, really the style of fight that would favor him there.
Yeah.
He decided to just refuse to do takedowns basically and
Mhm.
stand and bang with one of the best strikers probably to this day in his weight class. But make no mistake about it, that's probably where the majority of this fight will be fought.
Mm-hmm.
And the battle's going to be won by the distance control of these two because Kevin Holland's going to have a size and reach advantage. Can he keep himself on the outside and just snipe those really powerful straight right
Long
hands and left
strikes.
hands?
Yeah.
Yeah, like it. Meanwhile, can Jack close the distance, land some leg kicks, and really make good work inside the pocket? You saw how well he did that against Randy Brown. He even got a
Yeah.
submission win there. If he's able to do it here, could be a long night for Kevin. If the opposite comes true and Jack just can't find a way inside, it's going to be a tough night for him. So the distance control is really going to be the X factor here and really
Mm-hmm.
determines which way this fight will go. I have a feeling whoever wins this, it's going to be pretty decisive. Like I think it's going to be a statement victory. For Kevin, Dominic, I kind of want to switch gears even a little bit midpoint because I don't know if you saw his little presser moment he had where
Mm-mm.
I think it was it Jose Young or someone was asking him a question at his press conference, and they were asking him about the belt, like saying, I forget how it was worded. It's essentially the idea that we've talked about, where it's like
Sure.
Kevin Holland is filled with so much potential, especially as a welterweight,
But like, do you
but
want it?
but he seems to be the only guy who
Yeah.
doesn't see that. Like he seems to think of himself as being like a Donald Cerrone,
Yeah.
this fan friendly fighter, but not being a championship level fighter. And I think a lot of people can see him
Mm-hmm.
if he really wanted it to be a champion. And when he was asked about it and whatever certain terms were used, he was like, he kind of snapped at the guy and was like, why the fuck you guys always ask me about the belt? He's like, you think I care? Like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like you get the sense he doubled down on it. He's kind of like, y'all are the ones that make a big deal about the belt. Like, I don't really care about it. I'm here to put
Just here
on
to fight.
shows and get
Yeah.
paid, like and fight. That's such an interesting. It's interesting that in the last 2 weeks, Dominic, we've heard similar responses from him and Sean Strickland about the belt. It's like all of a sudden we're hearing these fighters be very honest about really their lack of, I guess, investment in the title.
It's
Like it's
it's like if I get there, I get there, right? But if not, I'm winning money and having fun fights. Like,
Yeah, so it's just an interesting dynamic there that we
mm-hmm.
all want to see Kevin like stick to his strengths in the matchup and do what's in his best interest to win, and he's more about getting those performance bonuses and being that fan favorite, trying to raise his profile and his stock and make bigger paydays. And that's another route too. Like you only have so much of a shelf life in this fight game, so
Yeah.
I can respect that. But does that mean, Dominic, that if this fight starts to turn in Jack's favor, will Kevin be able to make those adjustments, or is he just going to
Right.
look for get wild, look for that war to really send the fans home happy?
And you look, it's interesting. He has that such an open mindset, brings that out so openly to say, because a lot of these people that he's going to fight, Jack included here, they're obviously here to make money. That's why they're in the game, but they're gunning to get there. These young guys want to get to the top and win titles. Michael Chiesa still wanted to make a run. Stephen Thompson is still trying to make a run even a year later from their fight. But Kevin is kind of on his 2-fight win streak, but in the same spot. So he's always going to be having differing views from a lot of his opponents. And it can, I think, impact a fight here. That's a good question that I think we're going to have to keep an eye on in this one.
All right.